Welcome back to Great British Biking Adventures. This is episode 6 of our coast adventure. If you've been following the previous 5 episodes, you'll know that we're travelling the coastline of Great Britain. We set out from Weston-super-Mare and we've travelled the Somerset coastline, the North Devon coastline and all the way around the Cornish coastline. In the last episode, we got as far as the Torpoint ferry, which crosses the River Tamar. This is the second half of that day, and it's already quite late in the day. Join us as we travel the South Devon coastline.
The Torpoint ferry connects the A374 across the mouth of the River Tamar between Devonport in Plymouth and Torpoint in Cornwall. The service was established in 1791 and it became a chain ferry in 1832. The ferry boats are propelled across the river by pulling themselves on the chains. The chains then sink to the bottom to allow shipping movements in the river. 3 ferries operate on separate chains and slipways. Tolls are payable in the Torpoint to Devonport eastbound direction only, except for motorcyclists who pay westbound only, so we travelled free. That said, the toll is just £2 for cars and 40p for motorcycles. The ferry takes around 10 minutes as opposed to a 20-mile, 30-minute trip around the mainland. It operates 24 hours a day, every day of the year. In July 1923, an Asian elephant named Julia had swum across the river after she had broken loose and launched herself from the ferry. She was encouraged to swim by her trainer, who eventually succeeded in lassoing her with a chain, and she arrived safely at the other side. On the left is Stonehouse Barracks, the home of the Royal Marines 3 Commando Brigade, and referred to by the Commandos as the spiritual home of the Royal Marines. Dating from 1756, with the main parts built in the 1780s, Stonehouse is described as the oldest and most important group of barracks in England, not forming part of a fortification. A very rare example of 18th century planning and of great historic value. The Royal Marines, also known as the Royal Marines Commandos, are the UK's Special Operations Commando Force, amphibious light infantry, and also one of the 5 fighting arms of the Royal Navy. The Royal Marines can trace their origins back to 1664. The Commandos were formed in 1942. Plymouth is the second largest city in the southwest after Bristol. It has the largest operational naval base in Western Europe and is rich with maritime history. Many people believe the last time Britain was invaded was in 1066 by William the Conqueror, but this is not the correct answer. The Norman conquest was the last time Britain was successfully invaded, but there have been several enemy landings since then, all of which have been repelled. Plymouth has seen its fair share. In 1340 the French came ashore, burned a manor house and took some prisoners, but failed to get into the town. And in 1403 the town was burned by Breton raiders. Plymouth responded by fortifying itself and has been doing so ever since to counteract the threats of each era. As we ride around the city's shoreline, you can't help but notice the imposing high walls and fortifications. In the late 15th century, Plymouth Castle was constructed close to the area now known as the Barbican, and is featured on the city coat of arms. The castle served to protect Sutton Pool, which is where the naval fleet was based at the time. In 1512 an Act of Parliament was passed to further fortify Plymouth. The work included defensive walls at the entrance to Sutton Pool. Defences on St Nicholas Island also date from this time, and a string of 6 artillery blockhouses were built, including one on Fisher's Nose at the south-eastern corner of the Hoe. The Hoe was further strengthened by the building of a fort known as Drake's Fort in 1596. The site was encompassed within the present fortifications that were built in the 1660s and known as the Citadel. The Hoe is the naturally raised and levelled piece of land that overlooks Plymouth Sound, between Mill Bay Docks and Sutton Harbour. It's an open public space and a great place to gaze at the shipping and surrounding activity. In 1588 the Spanish sent a huge invasion force known as the Spanish Armada. It was regarded as invincible. Under the leadership of Sir Francis Drake, a much smaller British naval force outsmarted the Spanish and not only prevented them from landing their ships, but forced them on a gruelling voyage all the way around the British coast that devastated the Spanish. What was left of them eventually returned to Spain, and they never tried to take on the British again. According to legend, Drake insisted on completing his game of bowls on the Hoe while he waited for the tide to turn before engaging the Spanish Armada. In 1587 the first English settlers set out from Plymouth for a new life in North America and set up the Roanoke colony. The venture failed. Some returned and others disappeared mysteriously, but the seeds of hope for a new life had been planted in the minds of other brave and ambitious adventurers. And in 1620 the Pilgrims set sail for the New World and established the Plymouth colony. Okay, so we're out of Plymouth and we've come across this place, little harbour on some kind of estuary. Like all these places, it's very calm, very, very peaceful. Almost hear a pin drop.
After spending a while riding around the city of Plymouth, we took to the coast road again as much as we could. This involved gently meandering around inlets, crossing numerous creeks and rivers, while appreciating the breathtaking views and golden sandy beaches. We weren't in a rush and it was a beautiful day to enjoy the ride, but we did not have any idea where we were staying the night, and time was beginning to tick by. We were hoping that we would come across that quintessential English bed and breakfast, but it eluded us. While going through the resort of Salcombe, we popped into the inn opposite the car park, but there wasn't any availability. There didn't seem to be anything nearby, and when checking on our phones on booking.com, there was none either. It was quite likely places had closed for the winter season. We carried on, still hoping for that little unique hidden gem. While travelling through the countryside, we even stopped and knocked on the door of a farmhouse, which was advertising yurt accommodation. That sounded like fun, and we were up for it. However, there was no answer, except for the farm dog barking on the other side of the door. Now it was about 5:30. The light was starting to fade and we were getting tired. As we rode into Kingsbridge, we passed what looked like a really pleasant riverside inn. Once again we were hopeful, but it didn't last. We had to carry on. Before we did though, we took to our phones again and searched booking.com for available accommodation nearby. There wasn't much, but we ended up booking a let yourself in room in Dartmouth, which was still a good half-hour ride away. Although the light was stunning and the ride interesting, we had had enough of sitting on the bike and just wanted to have a warm bath and something to eat. That said, you just can't ignore the beauty of the English coast. For example, Slapton Ley is a nature reserve and site of special scientific interest within the South Devon area of outstanding natural beauty. The Ley, a local term for lake, is the largest natural body of fresh water in the south of England. We ride along the dramatic narrow shingle bar, a wonderful geological feature which separates the lake from the sea, known as Slapton Sands. The sunlight begins to dwindle, shadows form, and the sky takes on those sunset hues. We eventually arrive at our night stay, but we couldn't relax just yet, as the book yourself in room was nestled in amongst the terraced houses of the back streets of Dartmouth, and there wasn't any parking anywhere, not even for a motorcycle. Opposite the house was the back of the spar shop, with a small sort of parking area, home to the recycling trolley bins. With a bit of a reshuffle, we thought maybe we could park there. So, with all the charm we could muster, after a long day's riding, we asked if we could share the space out the back with the bins. The manager was very friendly and agreed that would be fine on the condition we were gone by 5 a.m. We were grateful though for the space to park and just accepted that we had an early start the next day. So we've just arrived at number 3 St Elmo Cottage, which is a do-it-yourself B&B in Dartmouth. We've parked somewhere down there in the back of the spa, and we're here.
Hello.
The accommodation was great. We had a lovely fish and chip supper, of course, and planned our early morning. This involved checking the ferry times for crossing the River Dart. That beautiful early morning experience you can see in our next episode.